Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Content warning ahead. This podcast contains very sensitive topics such as missing persons, unsolved cases, haunted houses, and paranormal activity. These type of topics can contain very upsetting, sensitive details and stories. Please listen responsibly. Welcome to Misty Mysteries, a podcast in the business of ghostly spooks and chilling crimes. I'm your host, Keely, and this is the second part in my multi-part series on the 28-Day Theory and Netflix docu-series. All of the locations I will be talking about in this series have ties to true crime or darker history and claims of the paranormal. And of course, they all have ties to the 28-Day Haunted docu-series based on Ed and Lorraine Warren's 28-Day Theory. Before we jump into today's location, I want to clear up a few mistakes from part 1. The first is I called it a 4-part, but it's actually 3. And the second, with the last haunted location, I mixed day 27 and 28. So when the team at the Lumber Baron Inn went back into the tunnel and found the newspaper clipping, this was actually day 28 instead of 27, like I said in the first part. With that said, let's refresh on what the 28-Day Theory is. This is a theory created by Ed and Lorraine Warren based on how they found hauntings took place in their case file. The theory is that for a paranormal investigator to fully investigate a haunted location, they would need to stay at the place for 28 days to fully pierce the veil and help the spirits or residents of the home. The docuseries 28 Days Haunted is put together by Tony Spira to continue the work of his in-laws Ed and Lorraine Warren on this theory. This documentary follows 3 teams at 3 haunted locations rarely investigated. The 3 teams are put into these locations with no communication to the outside world and no information on the location or what they should be doing other than trying to connect with the spirits of the home. In part 1, I talk about the Lumber Baron Inn, and today I'm talking about the Captain Grant's Inn. The Captain Grant's Inn is located in Preston, Connecticut. The home sits on a large property with lots of green scenery in Preston, Connecticut's oldest cemetery. This cemetery goes all the way back to the 1600s, and it's the final resting place of Captain William Grant and his wife, Mercy Adelaide Avery. Captain William Grant was the first owner of the home, building it for his wife, Mercy Adelaide, and their children in 1754. Captain Grant passed away in January of 1816, long before Mercy passed away at the age of 80 on March 12, 1861. Despite losing her love so long before her own passing, Mercy spent her life at the home her husband had built for her. The home actually remained in Captain Grant's family for 3 generations. During this time, the home saw the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. During the Revolutionary War, it became home for the Continental Army soldiers, and during the Civil War, it was shelter for enslaved people fleeing. It's a home rich in American history, and today, after receiving a significant renovation in the 1990s by the current owners, it has been turned into a historical B&B that not only is rich in history, but paranormal activity too. Visitors at Captain Grant's and the current owners have no shortage of experiences since renovation, including hearing knocking and footsteps, seeing unusual shapes and ghost children. Some have even felt invisible hands gently caress their faces. The owner describes these spirits as protective spirits, and I think the most protective of all is Mercy, who many believe is still there waiting for Captain Grant to come home. The home now has rooms with names after those important to Captain Grant's history, including Adelaide Room after Mercy. This room seems to be the hotspot of activity in the home. In here, a woman is seen wearing a colonial-era dress, holding the hands of 2 children. The TV turns on and off on its own, and the shower curtain will fall off without provocation. And no surprise, the Adelaide Room is also the hotspot for our team in the 28-Day Haunted series.
Is Mothman really a supernatural force predicting impending doom? Did Apollo 11 really land on the moon? Did you find out if that was a cult living just 2 doors down that you waved to every single day when you got your mail? If these are things that you ponder when you should be sleeping, then I would like to welcome you to Creepy Confidential. I'm your host, Noelle, your resident weirdo Wisconsinite. I open case files on my favorite cryptids, cults, conspiracies, and other worldly creepy, bringing you new cases, live broadcasts, and local lore. Some stories have been lost with time. Others are perhaps still happening today in your local communities, right under your very creepy noses. So get ready, creeps. It's Creepy Confidential.
So who is our team for this location? We first meet Sean Austin, a medium and demonologist who is paired up with 2 paranormal investigators and techs, Nick Simmons and Aaron Thompson. Nick and Aaron are just meeting Sean on this investigation, but Nick and Aaron have been investigating together since 2009. I think most interesting of all is that even though he had been an investigator for many years, Nick, who leans more on the tech side of paranormal investigation, is actually pretty open about being a skeptic to the paranormal. Which, for being in a haunted location for 28 days, investigating with a medium, this gets pretty interesting. I'm not gonna lie, I think Nick is definitely my favorite during this 28-day cycle, and around week 2 you will figure out why, but to get there we need to talk about day 1 first. Right from the start, while exploring the home, they all seemed drawn to the attic. In the attic, Sean tells the other men he feels a lot of energy and spirits asking for help. The other men joke about feeling the heat in the attic, and soon after Nick feels like he is being touched. They then move down to the 2nd floor, where Sean says he feels the most energy, but despite this feeling, the men start their investigation that night on the 1st floor of the home. Here, Sean starts to hear spirits of the home and picking up the name Adelaide. In hopes to reach out further to Adelaide, they decide to use a spirit box, and to help the spirits gather more energy to reach out through this box, they use something I've never actually seen before. On the table next to the spirit box, Nick had this little what looked like a Ferris wheel that he would spin with a small handle. This was an electrostatic generator that created energy to help the spirits reach out to the team better. Now, I'm not sure if it worked or if the spirits of this home were just excited to talk, because a lot came through from the spirit box. You can hear the spirits say a number of things from "to marry Adelaide," "leave here," "shut up," "help," "he's psychic." And right after the spirit says he's psychic, Sean shares that he is starting not to feel well, and from the spirit box we hear "no escape." From night 1, we head to day 4. This day, Sean shares with Nick and Aaron that he was having trouble connecting to anyone because there were just too many spirits in the home. The team didn't know what spirit to try to reach out to without any knowledge of the history, so they decided to focus on the name that kept coming up, Adelaide. They attempted to contact her the same way they did on night 1 with the spirit box and electrostatic generator. Speaking directly to Adelaide, they ask her if she needs help and if this home is hers. They then get the reply, "Captain Grant, wife, my captain." They then ask her who she is to the captain, and she says, "wife." After this, communication goes quiet, but the communication from Adelaide doesn't stop. That night, Sean gets a visit from Adelaide in his sleep. This dream begins with Adelaide walking the halls in a state of longing. She then walks up to the window in the room Sean is staying in, the Adelaide room, and points out the window towards something. Waking up on day 5, Sean tells Aaron and Nick about his dream that night. They decide towards dawn that day that they would walk the property in the direction she pointed towards. And sure enough, they find Preston's oldest cemetery. The men decide to split up and search for the graves that could be Captain Grant's or Adelaide's. We already know these two are buried in the cemetery, so quickly the men found Adelaide buried as the wife of Captain Grant right next to him. The men, now knowing Adelaide is buried next to her love, begin to wonder why she would be in this home still, and Sean starts to get this feeling that a dark spirit is trapping her and the other spirits in this home. We next see the team in week 2, day 14, or the next phase of the cycle, when the spirits begin to realize these investigators may not be leaving. It immediately begins with Sean running down the stairs to Nick and Aaron, who are working on reviewing some evidence. He tells them that he had just gotten out of the shower and saw writing on the mirror, so he left the shower running to keep it steaming, and the men run upstairs. In Sean's bathroom, the men see what looks like "I see you" written on the bathroom mirror. Nick, as a skeptic, is having a hard time believing a spirit was behind this, but Sean is set that a dark spirit wrote this, trying to tell him that it can see him. That night, the team set out to do another spirit box session to get to the bottom of this. During this session, Sean starts by asking who wrote on the mirror in the bathroom. This is the beginning of an intelligent interaction with a spirit, because you get the reply in the spirit box, "He is." Sean asks, "Who is he?" And the spirit on the box replies, "You, Sean." Nick, already skeptic at this point, asks who is writing on the mirrors, with a response on the spirit box saying, "Psychic." Sean begins to ask what games they were playing when they hear "trapped here" on the spirit box, and 2 loud thumps come from upstairs. As they run upstairs to check out the thumps, they hear another from the bathroom in the Adelaide room. At this point, I talked about it in part 1, and you can already see it with Nick being skeptical, but the investigation team is starting to turn on each other. After the thump in the bathroom, Aaron suggests he and Sean go to the cemetery to investigate, while Nick goes solo in the house. Nick disagrees, telling Aaron it makes no sense to run from the home when things are starting to pick up, and the two begin to argue over this. Nick and Aaron are upset with each other at this point, especially Aaron, who feels hurt by his friend of many years. And then we're cut to the next day, where the 3 men are sitting at the table, editing evidence, and Nick calls out Sean for faking the writing on the mirror. He uses a spirit box session where he believes the spirit actually called out Sean as evidence of this, but Sean dismisses it, telling Nick that this is what the dark spirit of the home wants. It wants them to turn on each other. The next day, the men are still arguing and really not getting anywhere, but Sean has another dream of Adelaide, and this time she was pointing him in the opposite direction as last time. 3:37 a.m., he wakes up from this dream and wakes up Nick for help. Sean and Nick at 3 in the morning take thermal cameras and head the direction she pointed to. Oddly enough, they find a hot spot in a perfect circle on the ground towards the direction she was pointing. Nick, knowing this could be a number of reasons and could be debunked, decides he's going to check this out further, but not till day 19, when we are cut to Nick in the middle of the night going out to this hot spot with tools and a metal detector. Using a thermal camera and metal detector, he finds the hot spot and begins to dig, where he finds a copper pentagram 3 feet under the dirt. Something I really enjoyed about this scene is that they then take the time to have Nick explain the origin of the pentagram. According to Nick, the pentagram was originally the symbol for a sacred female, but throughout Christianity became a symbol of evil. Although it's used for protection, or should be, he wondered what the intentions were when this pentagram was buried on the property, because as we know, intentions are important. Nick brings this pentagram into the house to Aaron and Sean, who also wonder what the intentions were when it was buried. We never learn what the intentions are when it was buried, but Sean is convinced that this was to clog the portals, preventing the spirits of the home from moving on, including Adelaide. Now on to day 27, Sean has shared with the viewers and his fellow investigators that his mission at the home is to save the spirits trapped there by blessing all the mirrors of the home in hopes to reopen these portals, allowing those stuck in the home to move on. Like all 3 locations in this series, Day 28 is what Tony calls the final showdown. This is when the veil is at its thinnest and the investigators are at a very vulnerable place. For the team at Captain Grant's, Sean was going to be leading this final showdown, starting with the spirit box session. Sean tells all the spirits in the home that they were going to help set them free, receiving a response on the box saying, "Never come back here." They push past this response as Sean says, whatever souls are ready to go back to God are going to go back to God. Whatever Sean felt in this home must not have been happy with this because a loud thump is heard from Sean's room. Aaron and Sean move upstairs to investigate the thump, while Nick stays downstairs to cover all grounds. In the room, Sean begins to pray, and a loud thump is heard from the attic. Sean stays in the room as Aaron goes to check the attic, only to find that a chair had been thrown down the stairs. As Sean continues to pray, bottles are thrown down the attic stairs, along with repetitive thumping. Meanwhile, downstairs, doors are opening right in front of Nick. At this point, the men knew they needed to finish what they had just started, and they moved down to the basement where Sean began to bless the mirrors in the home from the bottom up. Throughout the entire time Sean is doing these blessings, thumping is heard throughout the home and items are being thrown. Despite this crazy poltergeist activity, they push through and finish off with a spirit box session to ask Adelaide if they helped her and the spirits of the home, only to hear her say, "I'm home." I do want to say that whenever they were talking to who they believed was Adelaide, it was always the same voice coming through the spirit box, which is kind of crazy to me. And when she said, "I'm home," I heard that voice we had heard throughout this whole 28-day cycle. Obviously, it's a 28-day theory, but we last see the team on their 29th day, their departure day. Sean shares while leaving he feels peace, believing he helped Adelaide, and ends his time at the Captain Grant's by leaving flowers for Adelaide at her grave. As for Tony Spira and Aaron Sagers, they felt this final showdown with poltergeist-like activity was proof that the 28-day theory is real. They also hoped that the team was able to leave the spirits of the Captain Grant's Inn in a better place, like the team set out to do towards the end. That is the 28-day cycle at the Captain Grant's Inn with Sean, Nick, and Aaron, and the short history of the home. Tune in for the last part of this series, and probably the darkest episode yet, which I think will be fitting for how close it will be to Halloween. Don't forget to let me know what you think by leaving a review or heading over to the podcast's social media, which you'll find in the episode description, and I will see you next time for more ghostly spooks and chilling crime.